So it's a pretty well-known fact that a lot of dismissive avoidance in relationships struggle to be really present when you're stressed, when you're dysregulated, because they actually struggle with something called co-regulation. But in today's video, if you are somebody who feels misunderstood emotionally, unseen, unheard, or just feels like you really want this person to understand and empathize with your pain, we're going to talk about how exactly to get them to do this. And also, really quickly before I dive in, if you want to access a free course for life all about attachment styles and intimacy, and you want to actually keep that course, it's a $200 value. You get to download it and keep it completely for free. We're doing this just for the month of March. You can use the link in the description down below, and it's actually a 7-day free trial to every course at PDS. But when your trial ends, you get to keep that course for life. And it's really all about different attachment styles, their patterns around sex, intimacy, closeness, what things you're going to see, what triggers they tend to have, and really how to approach the unhealthy or healthy components of that with really great strategies. First and foremost, sometimes after a dismissive avoidant has done something that accidentally hurt a partner or loved one, they may really deflect. And this can look like you bringing to their attention, hey, this experience hurt me, or that hurt my feelings. And they may make a joke. They may kind of brush it under the rug or sort of shrug it off and do something that's designed to make light of the situation. Now, from the dismissive avoidant perspective, they're trying to avoid conflict and they're feeling afraid, but this isn't something that's in their own conscious awareness. It's like this sort of subconscious coping mechanism that's automatic and not a premeditated behavior. But on the receiving end, when you go to somebody with something important and they deflect it or shrug it off, it can feel really hurtful and rejecting. And so this is something really important to pay attention to. And again, at the end of this video, I'll tell you about what to do if you're seeing any of these patterns here that we'll cover. Pattern number 2 that a dismissive avoidant might do is avoid the situation altogether. And this can look like you bringing something up over text, them not answering, them just totally texting you back about a completely separate topic later on. Or this could be sort of avoiding a conversation, changing the subject, and really just having this strong avoidance strategy in that situation. Now, again, that can feel really hurtful, really rejecting, really painful if you're the one on the receiving end of that conversation, especially when you're trying to bring something vulnerable up to somebody else's attention or awareness. As the DA, they often haven't had any healthy communication model to them. So they usually didn't have parents or caregivers that worked through fights or arguments. They usually didn't have an upbringing where they were taught to negotiate their needs or to validate each other's feelings or to notice how their behavior affects another person. And whenever there's neglect, there's usually an absence of these things being taught in any sort of real tangible way. And as a result, when a dismissive avoidant is in that state where somebody's bringing something to their attention, it's quite common that somebody who's not working on themselves or doesn't have this awareness about themselves as a DA may just avoid the situation altogether because they're kind of entering into a state of learned helplessness. And what essentially happens is they're like, okay, there's a conflict or there's a problem. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to pull away from the situation because I'm not sure how to navigate it. And all I know is it makes me feel uncomfortable. And our brain is literally wired to avoid discomfort. And so this can be this sort of automatic or autopilot coping mechanism the DA has. But again, it can be really painful and challenging to be on the receiving end of that. Because when you go to somebody and you want to open your heart and share something personal or vulnerable, or let somebody know hey, I would love for you to see how this situation affects me so we could stop it. It feels like you're kind of helpless in the situation to move the needle, to see any positive changes, to work through something. And it can feel really disempowering to the depth of connection of the relationship. Number 3, we may see a DA get defensive. And this can be something, again, leaving the same type of impact, the same type of result to relationships. They may get defensive. And usually when somebody's defensive, they're not really present, right? They're not really hearing you. And again, that defensiveness is because DAs are modeled emotional neglect, there's this concept, or really it's a subconscious belief a lot of DAs carry. And it's everybody's just responsible for their own feelings and needs. Nobody's responsible for each other. Why do they believe this? Because that was what they were taught by proxy in their experiences growing up, right? That was what was modeled to them. And modeling, behavioral modeling, what we're shown over and over again, programs us. And especially those programs tend to run a lot deeper in childhood. So sometimes when imagine you're a DA, right? And you believe everybody's responsible for their own stuff. And then somebody comes in and says, hey, your stuff is affecting my stuff. It goes against their belief system, and it can cause them to feel like flustered or frustrated. They can feel like, hey, why are you putting this on me? That's not mine, that's yours. And it's not, and what they're modeling is like a counterdependent or like really independent relationship rather than interdependent. And so to a DA, when somebody says, hey, your stuff's hurting my stuff, it feels like, oh, you're expecting codependency from me. But what they're not noticing is actually, no, I can be responsible for my stuff too, but I wanted to let you know so that we can work on this together. And that's more like healthy interdependent behavior. But often DAs are more on this end of the continuum, and they have to have the knowledge and the learning to be able to understand this so that they can move into interdependent waters. And part of that as well is also reprogramming the belief that says everybody's just out for themselves, and instead learning that part of like close relationships mean, we're each responsible for our own feelings and our own actions and behaviors, but we can also acknowledge how we could affect somebody else, and we can have their back and look out for those things and be mindful of those things in our relationships together with that person that we love or care about. And that's part of like what creates that interdependency long term. Another big one is we will see dismissive avoidants stonewall or ice somebody out when they're in a dynamic where they feel like somebody's bringing something to their awareness. They can feel like, okay, nope, you're making this mine. And they can literally like pull back altogether. They can sort of like shun somebody a little bit. They can shut down completely. Now, a lot of people on the receiving end of that will feel like that's purposeful and it's like a punishing technique. And in my experience working with many, many DA clients over the years in couples counseling and different work with people, what I found the most is that that's not the case. Of course, it can be in very specific situations, but I would say it's probably for a DA like 1% of the time. And there may actually be like other dynamics going on there as well when that does fit the bill for 1%. But oftentimes it's that DAs don't know how to communicate, don't know how to show up and work through things. And so this is just them coping in this situation or experience. By the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but if you are struggling to like be heard, to get through to somebody, to make your relationship work, to like change gears, like you feel like you're trying everything, but it's just not clicking, you're not seeing the needle move. I have a really empowering course for this. It's called How to Repair Any Relationship. And it really dials in like on what the best type of relationship will be for who you're working with, right? Like if you have a really challenging relationship with somebody, you may have more separation from that person, and that could be your best version of that relationship. Like let's say you have a family member who is struggling with a personality disorder and they manipulate you a lot. Like you may want to have like a little bit of separation for that to be the best quality of the relationship, or that best quality of the relationship may be no contact, but it helps you define and understand according to your needs and boundaries what's right for you based on what that person's willing to put in. And it also helps you go through all of the different dynamics to learn to work through conflict, learn to de-escalate problems and pain points, learn to foster healthier communication, and like really learn to reconnect more deeply, should that be the appropriate and healthy person to do that with, and helps you like define that and understand whether it is or not. And then do the work to like really change gears on the relationship to get it off the rocks and back into like smooth sailing territory. And you can check that course out for free for 7 days using the link in the description box below. And it also gives you access to the whole school. So you can join the live calls with me 4 days a week, or 4 times a week on 3 separate days. And we have a whole bunch of really cool community events, social events, ways to like connect with like-minded people in there who are also doing the work. And you can just go scope it all out for free for 7 days. And you can ask me your questions. You can come on video chat with me. You can just type in the chat if you don't want to be on video, like it's whatever makes you comfortable. But that link is below, and it gives you free access for that 7-day period. So check it out if you're interested. I would love to see you there. So going back to this, like we'll see that the DA will just stonewall somebody, like ice somebody out, like really avoid. And most of the time it's not to be punishing, it's not to be mean, it's to protect themselves, because again, they feel this sense of like learned helplessness, they feel afraid, and they often feel really disempowered in relationships and communication, and it can really keep them stuck. And it can keep them in a position where it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to do from here. So it's better to just push away the thing that's causing me pain. And last but not least, another unhealthy pattern of communication for the DA will be to blame the other person, or like the other person's behaviors or insecurities or fears. This can be one of the most painful ones because it's like, it feels like things are being shifted back around on you, when often you're trying to like be approach oriented and resolve for something. DAs much more rarely do this. They tend to do this when a relationship is like really on the rocks. And unfortunately, one of the big sponsoring causes for why dismissive avoidants do this is because they don't know how to communicate the fact that they don't feel like their needs are being met, and they haven't learned how to like articulate their needs, share their needs, feel comfortable being vulnerable around their needs. And so they will feel a sense of a chip on their shoulder too for different things. And then when somebody comes to them and says, hey, this is what's going on for me, rather than them being like, hey, I also feel like I don't have needs met, I also feel like I have things that are going on for me, they don't even necessarily consciously realize that. And so the way they acknowledge the problem in the relationship, the problem in the relationship, will be to sort of put the onus back on the other person as well. And it can just feel like you're at such a standstill in that case or situation. So if you are a DA and you listen to this, I hope that this helped you really uncover like maybe what's going on for you beneath the surface if any of these patterns of behavior come up. I also hope you can have compassion to yourself in understanding that like you didn't really get good modeling growing up. You didn't really get a lot of healthy behaviors shown to you. So no wonder you feel stuck or helpless or have unhealthy coping mechanisms. But I also hope you can see with compassion to yourself how your behaviors can really affect other people and feel bad, especially when in healthy interdependent relationships, people are naturally hoping to have this like collaboration in looking out for each other and taking care of each other's feelings and needs. And also, if you're on the receiving end of this as the partner of a DA, something that's so important to be able to do is to ask this person, to tell the dismissive avoidant, hey, I am not trying to make you feel bad. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm trying to share with you something about me and an experience that I'm having so that we can work through this together. And if you position it that way, and then the very next step that you take is to healthily communicate your needs in the positive, as opposed to in criticism, it's so much more likely to be better received by a DA. So like if you need the DA to take a turn doing chores, don't say you never do the chores, I feel really frustrated about it. Say, I would love for you to do the laundry on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Like give something really specific, give an expression of a need and a positive, let them know you come in peace. You know, I'm not here to cause a problem. I'm here to share with you something that's important to me that will help me feel understood and seen. And at the end of that conversation, turn around and encourage the dismissive avoidant to do the same. Say, hey, if you have a need from me, I want to know and I want to understand about it too. And I know that's how we are going to have each other's back and grow together in our relationship. But we both need to have that open chain of communication or line of communication with one another. So I hope this makes a lot of sense. This is also a great video to share with a loved one if you're struggling with any of these challenges, to show to them. Maybe this will help them sort of see things through a different lens. And that is it for today. Please subscribe to this channel if you're getting a lot of value from being here. I would really appreciate it. And also let me know questions you have in the comments below, like what's coming up in your communication, some of the biggest challenges in communication you might have with a DA, and try to do it in a constructive way. Share what your challenge is, but what you would need instead. And that will help you frame your thinking about the problem into a solution-oriented format. So thank you again, and I will see you in the next video.